Hey, welcome everybody today to our Connex panel on ethical right-sizing, preserving dignity and trust in an automated era. My name is Amy Bembarka. I'm the head of HR for the American Gas Association based in Washington, D.C. We have some great panelists here today, and we're going to talk about how we can humanize these difficult moments in the life of an organization, addressing survivor syndrome, building in resilience, etc. So maybe I will start by having our panelists introduce themselves. Estrella, may we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Estrella Parker, Chief People Officer at Cupertino Electric Inc., an electrical construction company building large, complicated projects around the nation. And we are headquartered in San Jose and have over 5,000 employees.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Morrison. I'm the Chief People Officer for Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, VTA, and we are headquartered in San Jose, California. We have around 2,400 employees.
Hi, I'm Jobina Gonsalves. I'm the Chief People Officer at Forrester Research. We are a global company headquartered in Cambridge in Massachusetts and operate all around the world. We are a management and advisory company that helps clients through these dynamic times.
Great. Well, thank you again for being here to each of you and to lending your expertise and experience. I'm going to start with a high-level question around the communication frameworks and strategies that you have found most effective in leading these conversations to help support dignity and minimize trauma, and also reinforce the organizational values, which will obviously be different from organization to organization. Estrella, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I was thinking about this webinar we're doing, and as I was reflecting on some of the elements that are really key, first of all, to do this well, you have to do it all the time. And what I mean by that is that this is something that normally happens in the course of an organization. So, as the strategic leader of organization, people, and culture, you have to think about creating an environment that is constantly building trust and constantly promoting human connection. So that when you are doing this very hard work, the system is already ready to be human to each other. So that is kind of really key and foremost. And when you've already established trust in an organization and a high degree of trust in senior leadership and management, then it's easier to then have a platform for communications that may be difficult news, but is trusted. And then, of course, as you think about how to carry it out, this is especially important for us because oftentimes when that happens, the organization is already under financial stress or some kind of duress, and we have to lend voice as chief people officers to making sure that the people that are affected, which is actually the entire organization, not that just the people you're right sizing or laying off, are thought about and that the message is going to them, to all of them, right? So that the different messaging goes to all of them. And it's always been important also, I believe, to have a really good group of HR employee relations, we call them people relations folks, who are there to support the managers and there to honestly take over when the conversations don't go well. So those are some of the key elements. And I think the key thing is to really already invest in creating the kind of environment, the kind of norms in communication that builds trust, that is always very human centered.
Yeah, that's a great point. If your organization lacks that foundation of trust or psychological safety, it's certainly not the time to be building it. It's, perhaps a little bit too late, honestly, going through a change like this. Jabina, what have you seen in your HR career?
Yeah, and I kind of agree also with Austria about the trust being like the foundational thing. But trust does get eroded if you do this way too often, right? And how do you keep rebuilding it? Uh, though in terms of the actual logistics, I firmly believe that having a structured, thoughtful sequence of events, which is well thought about in terms of who does what and when, and having an alignment also with managers, because most of the time managers are not ready or not equipped to handle such conversations, and it falls on HR to then pick up the pieces and convey the not so good message. So just having a very thoughtful written down sequence of events so that everybody knows what role they play in that. And I also agree with Austria in terms of don't just think about the people that are going to be impacted, because the whole organization is impacted. So really thinking about what happens after the day off, the next day, and the day after, and the third day after. And how do you communicate and keep communicating so that you start rebuilding that trust and pick up the pieces for the culture?
Yeah, that's a really important point that it's although sometimes people feel like it's a one and done thing, it's really an event and the logistics need to be managed and planned and it's a process that doesn't have a neat start and ending.
Totally. And
So
I also feel that the script, right? Like sometimes you do share with managers what you need to say, but in the actual call, people get nervous. They sometimes are not bought in the message because it has been handed over to them by their managers. So really getting to the details of actual words that you need to say is to make it more human, to make it more empathetic, more authentic. I think that requires a lot of HR muscle.
yeah.
Yeah, to just add to that a little bit, too, it really is hard because for many managers, this might happen once, this might happen never, right, in their career to have this conversation with people. So we've actually included it in our leadership training in sort of the management 101. We've already included it. Like what are some of the toughest conversations you might have? And you already role play it so that when it actually has to happen, they've had some experience with it already. So because again, you don't practice, and the thing that I always tell managers is that this is about the people you're talking to, not about you. Because what happens is you will get so uncomfortable, you will want to ease your own discomfort. So learn to sit with and be okay with your discomfort because you're focused on the person you are talking to, and you have to give them space to be upset. You have to give them, it's natural to have emotions when this news are happening. So you have to be there to care for that.
Yes, that definitely takes maturity to kind of decenter yourself, especially if somebody is having a reaction, which is understandable. So, Sonia, let's talk about what we can do as HR leaders to help drive really clear and transparent messaging, navigating all the complexities, the legal concerns, organizational politics, you name it. And how do we help dictate the timing and the tone and the logistics that will lead to the best outcomes?
So thank you. I'm from a public sector, so things are different in the public sector to the private sector from a process standpoint. We don't encounter layoffs quite as much as maybe some private sector do, but we do. I've been through several rounds of layoffs. I know that the cities in the Bay Area we're going through it, not here at VTA, but and so I think the role that HR can play is that coordinating, bringing people together. So we are the people. In public sector, we're a very unionized, highly unionized environment. And so that is a key piece. This is being on the same page, or at least being clear and transparent in communication. So it shouldn't be, it's not last minute for public sector. So we should be having conversations starting at the board. So briefing our board on so that it's not a surprise, so that it's not a surprise for the community. We have to think about the community a lot. So the more sort of we develop talking points is based on the budget, and so this should never be a surprise. And so we start to cascade our message down. And so that it starts with the board, it starts with having that clear message there. and then it goes down to the divisions. But at the same time, HR is already talking to the unions so that they're not surprised, and so that we give them as much time. So we need to build in time for our unions. That's where we also have to work very closely with legal. So we should have a communication strategy for this, as well as a labor relations bargaining strategy. And so I end up working really closely with our communications person, right? And that's kind of my in lockstep there, so that we are all of our messages, that we can have messages for different levels, messages for managers, messages for the division heads, messages that are going out, and so that nothing goes out that hasn't been seen by communications and HR. For that consistency, that people focus. That is one of our values, is people first. And so I love that Australia talked about, the values of the organization. So our messaging is consistent. It's based in the facts of the budget. It's based in our values, and we want that always to be in the forefront. And you're talking about timing. So understanding large events that are happening in your organization. So for whatever that may be, we had an awful tragedy in VTA 5 years ago. So not that that's happening here, but I would be very aware of what communication goes out around that timing. We've also got FIFA, and we've had Super Bowl. So we're moving our city organization. So these are the things that I would think of if it was VTA. It's not VTA. But understanding what is going on, and you certainly don't want to do this the day before Employee Appreciation Day. Just having, and as you work with the unions, just being mindful of how you show up. Don't wear your Hawaiian shirt to a conversation that is about people losing their jobs. So it's that nonverbal as verbal. It's all of that, having a consistent message that we're caring and we care about our people. And so I think that HR has a good eye and a good handle on all of those pieces. So being all in lockstep.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And it's just to paraphrase, there's a lot of environmental scanning that needs to happen, and you need to identify your stakeholders and just ensure really tight coordination. Ultimately, it can feel like a lot to plan these things, but I think it is the most respectful way to handle it, especially for those who are impacted.
Mhm.
Let's turn our attention to what happens next. I would love to hear any experience or tips that you all have had with post-layoff support for primarily the impacted employees, but for remaining employees as well, whether it's outplacement or mental health, financial planning. What has really had a positive impact that you have seen in your career?
I think first of all, if in your organization you have the kind of thing where you have a policy on this, it's already good to, within your policy, communicate that this is our position. This is how we stand for when the situation happens. And so we will offer these kind of support before, this kind of support after, so that people know also that if it ever happens to them, it's not like it's just going to happen to them. They're going to get support. And that's something that they read, before it ever happens. And then, of course, when it happens, I love that over time, I have seen, because, I've had a long career, but over time, there are all these services now in our world, right, that we can offer. It used to be you just had outplacement. And now you have, even the EAPs have a plethora of things that they can support people with. So if it's available to you, I would really fight for it in the budget. If sometimes that's a discussion that people have, and I always just say, how much would a lawsuit cost? And so I would definitely fight for all of the all of these things that we've listed here. career counseling, career support. And if it's the bigger the layoff is, the more I would offer. Upgrading the standard, for instance, for the career counseling, or a longer period for certain of these services. And most of these are already in your benefit portfolio. And so you just have to trigger some of these services and make it available to people. We also typically have hotlines that are our employee relations folks, so that people can at any time call about anything. And so you just upgrade that level during, these tough times, both before and after.
I love the suggestion of putting this stuff in a policy, or documenting it somewhere. Just to go back to your earlier comments, like setting expectations goes so far to building trust with people before the bad stuff, unfortunately has to happen. Sonia, Jabina, what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the normal outplacement and career counseling and EAP, I find it's also useful to have something like a CV book that you could share, because people like to hire from somebody that you referred, and references work really well, employee references. So circulating that also helps. I think in terms of the support that is given to the people who are left behind, because there's an enormous level of uncertainty in the organization, and they're not only worried about their own jobs, but there's a survivor guilt, and they're also worried about who's going to do the extra work, right? Like, what happens to this work that is going to still be there? So giving them the space to feel and to be distressed and to be angry and to be frustrated. I've done calls right within like first 24 hours all around different time zones of the world, so that people can share what they are feeling, even if it's raw emotion, because they need to be allowed to feel. And we can't just say, oh, let's move on. And this new bright thing is happening around us, and a new sales strategy is coming into place, because then you're not being empathetic. Then you're just kind of putting it under the rug. So that helps a lot. It's as I said, picking up the pieces after. What happens after is also as coordinated as what happens before. And I like that we have a lot more options now that we can offer our employees, whether it's extended coverage, even for healthcare. Sometimes the primary employee is the primary insurance holder. And then what happens to the family, and what are they going to do while they look for jobs? So things like that really make a difference. And then also, as Austria earlier mentioned, like having a team of your HR team who has done this before, who feel confident about doing it the right way, convey the right message, and also knowing the answers. So they feeling empowered that they can share what is going to be offered, makes a big difference. Because if you are at the other end of the call and you get to know your job is being impacted, having somebody saying that I don't know, let me check this for you, feels like the company did not put enough thought into it while this is your career, right? So I think that makes a big difference, that everybody feels empowered enough to share what is being offered and explain if required. And a hotline comes in handy there.
Yeah, I love the hotline. I think training staff and having them practice who are going to be a part of the conversation is one of those logistics that you need to plan in and make time for, because it really does matter. Sonia, anything that you would like to add?
Sure. I actually have 6 career counselors on staff. That's part of what they do at our various locations, and also here at headquarters. And so working with them, and so career ladders, career counseling, internal development is is a big focus of ours. And so I've had these before, so we get those people involved as well. In sort of, it helps whatever those consistent sort of high touch individual help that we can give, treating people as an individual, having like Australia said, having just the basic benefits written down somewhere. The other thing that I've found helpful that goes the extra is to ask through the unions, or ask employees directly, what else? So this is what you can expect, but what else do you want to see? And sometimes that has given some things that we've not really thought about before, and engages them in that way. I think that for the after part, we also allow people to come back for the next 2 or 3 or whatever years that is, 2 to 3 years, and back into their position or a similar position, so that and we also build in touch points with those people afterwards. So where are you, like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, like so that we try not to just let people completely separate. And maybe that's a public sector piece, but we've found that has been helpful with our folks.
That's really interesting. I'm a huge fan of outplacement services, and they typically would provide some reporting, but of course, it's still self-reported by the employee, not necessarily verified. I've even done it if there wasn't budget or there wasn't an appetite to support outplacement. If you have like a recruiting team, which traditionally they're not super busy, if you're doing a layoff, they have some skills that are transferable to that, and oftentimes, can help with their feelings of survivor's guilt to be able to support their colleagues. I think it also like humanizes it where you're still allowed to talk to each other. Everybody's still human and nobody did anything wrong. Presuming that's the message that the company's going with. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point, Amy. I just remembered in one other organization I was with, our recruiters, because first of all, part of that process of our commitment is we will do our best to place you internally, and we actually share the numbers. Like the original budget was this many people, and we were able to place or move this many people, and so these are the numbers so that it's transparent to people that, leadership and management are trying really hard to make this as least impactful. But our recruiters, I remembered, they sought out other organizations that are hiring. And when they saw, the list of impacted people, they started already generating some leads for our folks who were impacted to, go pursue, which was really nice. It feels, like a collaborative effort within the organization to help.
I love that.
With public sector, because of the union and the seniority and the way that things work, often the laid off employee or position will have bumping rights, seniority rights to take somebody else's. So we lay off by position, but that person may then end up in another unit where in a position they'd held before. And that is paying attention to where people go is really important, because they're going to feel uncomfortable in this new, and they might have bumped somebody. So somebody may have lost their job and they're coming in. So following the path of where people go internally, providing them some support, as well as talking to that unit, sort of having some, forums, round open table discussions, like you're losing somebody and you're going to have somebody coming in. How are you going to help integrate this person who is also, this is not what they chose either. So trying to keep get the teamwork back on track afterwards.
Let's continue developing that theme of, the survivors, the employees who still remain. How should HR be helping to rebuild their trust, their safety, and cohesion? I heard Jabina talk about like give them space to feel how they're going to feel and be reasonable with your expectations. What else should we be doing or anticipate needing to do?
I think also one of the thing is the quick follow up in terms of if there's an organizational change, announcing who's going to lead the next. So department wide changes, structural changes, the org design needs to be well thought out before the day off, so that people are not like, okay, now who do I report to, and does this manager know about me? Will I have to build my credibility again with my performance and all that? So I think that is important, that there's clarity about what happens next in terms of the organizational structure, and the managers know what they are required to do. So even that also sometimes helps, because every challenge there's an opportunity attached to it. So people then look at, okay, I know this is sad and I'm losing some of my co-workers, but I may have an opportunity to lead a bigger team now and I have to spread my wings here. So I think that helps a lot to have a structure in terms of how you announce the post layoff organization quickly. so that there is more clarity about what happens about performances and of evaluations and goal setting and the projects which are underway, what happens to them, who gets support. So that is one thing that I found very helpful.
I love that, the continuity and planning forward. What else?
I think messaging. So we do town halls in public sector. The messaging that's coming from our CEO or general manager, then it gets reinforced as well. So afterwards, there's a lot of group listening opportunities, either at the division level or in a large, trying to bring everybody, not that you can bring a lot of people together, but with technology these days, our CEO can reach a larger group of people. So I think that is taking an approach from the top down, being more visible. So having the executives be more visible and more present and listening, and not just pretending like everything is business as usual. And we can't always promise to fix everything. So being realistic about the expectations, I can empathize and I can listen. I may not be able to solve all your problems. So I think that personal touch afterwards and continuing that, not to assume to stop at any particular point, but continue as long as it's needed. And so that's where we have forums for employees and through the unions as well to bring up how people are feeling at the front line. So making sure that we don't assume that there's like, well, it's been 6 months, it should be good enough now, or it's been a year, so it should be good enough. We need to continue to meet people where they're at for maybe longer than what we're thinking.
Yeah. Those are both really, really good points. I was actually thinking, those are two main things you have to do, right? Like be ready with kind of the objective part of what people have to focus on, so that they can engage in that quickly. And then the communication strategies. I think that you sort of double the norm. Like if you're having monthly meetings, make it every other week or something like that. It's like so that they feel that level of attention and the level of avenues to be able to engage in the organization. The only other thing I would add is just like, this is a change. So it's also the same practices we have around change management. So really engaging the people of influence in the organizations. It's not just the leaders, because it's absolutely the leaders are people of influence, and them being out there and being in touch with what's really going on in the organization is helpful. But also the informal leaders, if you could help, charter them for that bit of time that, you're going to be in this transition to help the organization and be the feelers and be also the messengers in the organization. So that is one other thing I think that's always useful.
Yeah. I think one thing I heard Sonia say that's so critical is the not overpromising piece. The natural thing employees who remain want to hear is that it's not going to happen again. And in reality, leaders want to say that too, but we can't, because even if it's not contemplated, for the foreseeable future, you never know what's going to happen in life, and you have to kind of, as a leader and as an HR leader, embrace that uncertainty. And I think Estrella's point about activating your champions and your change agents, and helping them, give the assurance that you can give is a really great idea. Um, so why don't we talk a little bit about how we put our own mask on first? So before we help everybody else take care of themselves, we have to make sure that we're in a good place. So as HR leaders, what are your self-care practices to maintain your mental health and your balance when you've had to navigate these really difficult changes?
Well, I think just like what we talked about earlier in terms of already having regular practice for yourself, that you're always, for me, and it's different for everyone, right? Like, so for me, it's very much some of my physical practices in terms of, being active and not sports, but I do yoga, I paddleboard, I hike, because your body is the emotional vessel. So if you don't do something to be able to release all this intense emotionality in our jobs, then it's hard to keep it being a stable vessel for that, right? And you set the tone in the organization also. So to me, that's one important thing. So sometimes when it is hard because you are busy, you're doing all this planning and this logistics, I am very selfish about those things. The other thing is I really engage in the stories of those people that are affected. I personally engage in their stories and get in touch with them, and it becomes very real for me. And I can trust that. And when I tell people, it is always an opportunity for someone to pivot and have a better life and this. And I can actually tell those stories because most of the time it is. Right? It's very rare that it becomes really a disaster for people. So that helps me because it helps me understand that, it builds resilience in people and people are resilient and they find ways to better themselves.
I would add here one other thing is I mean, nobody joins HR as a profession or chooses HR as a profession to be doing this. So being aware that all our employees, all our HR team members are also feeling it because sometimes they are the ones in the thick of things. They've been working on this for last 3 months, 4 months, however long it takes for the preparation, and then there's like this adrenaline that is getting released because they're working on it. So being very mindful about they need that release, they need that time to also like after they're done with all the communications, because also since we are global, we have Europe and APAC, and sometimes that's a longer tail because it has all the other regulatory things. So it's not done when the organization thinks it's done. It has about 6 months still going in. So giving them that space helps. And also, for me personally, as a HR leader, I'm very mindful or very compartmentalized about what is my circle of influence, what is my circle of concern, and where do I really should not be wasting my emotions on, because there are things which would really get to you, and there's a lot happening outside. So just being mindful also about that your employees are trying to navigate their personal life amidst this professional changes that are happening to them, and being very empathetic towards it, that helps a lot. I think one other thing that helps is also helping leaders navigate, because some of them feeling the loss of their part of their team members, but also trying to project a more positive, optimistic way forward is not easy. And they probably didn't choose to lead the team in this situation. They would have loved to have that role, but maybe not given to them in this situation where they had to say bye to a friend who's a colleague who's been with them for so long. So, really helping them in that journey makes you feel, I mean, that's probably the reason why a lot of our HR peers join HR, to be helping somebody in their journey of career. And I think that looking at that silver lining sometimes helps you get over your emotional baggage that you're carrying through this for longer time than the organization leaders are.
Oh,
Thanks for sharing.
I have one hard and fast rule that whenever I hire a new supervisor, a new manager, a new director, and that is you cannot create more stress for your staff. So you cannot be emailing, texting, calling at all hours of the day and night. When they're on vacation, they're on vacation. And so setting those boundaries, I'm like, if you need something so immediately, message me and we'll talk about it. But so that's my one and hard and fast rule. Do not create more stress for your staff than they already have from HR. So the idea of, and I think Australia talked about this, secondary trauma or secondary, as HR, we deal with everybody else's bad day and then we bring it home as well. So I train all of my HR leaders, supervisors, etc., to say, and what are you doing to take care of yourself today? Like to each other, like, and what are you? So when they come to me and they tell me I'm saying, well, and what are you doing to take care of yourself? I've already said it today. I've already said it once today. So that like, Like what am I? Because you've got nothing to give. Like you said, Amy, we've got nothing to give if you're not okay yourself. So I practice that we do hard things all day, every day. And so we need to take care of ourselves outside of, like Australia. I have outside, I try to make sure that I keep my boundaries and I do things that fill me up. And we're very big on mindfulness and what do we do for like 2 minutes during the day to come break it down into small things. So we do 50-minute meetings instead of an hour, 25 instead of 30 minutes, because people need to be able to breathe, eat, walk, do something to take care of that stress, even if it's only for a micro break during the day. So I think that to me it's really is number one for me is how do we as we walk through how we bring ourselves, how we react is like, how am I contributing to this? Am I increasing the stress level? Am I decreasing the stress level in any one particular moment? Because the work, the technical, that piece doesn't change, but how we approach the work and talk about the work and that can change the experience of people.
That's so simple, Sonia. Like, don't add to their stress. Managers should make your life easier. It seems so obvious, but obviously we know it's not. And the collective wisdom of this group shows in our experience that it doesn't always play out that way. So, um, there's been part of the reason why we're having this conversation is because there's been so much macroeconomic change and upheaval over the past several years, and there's been a lot of reckoning and Monday morning quarterbacking, if you will. How have you helped the companies and leaders that you work with process these things, do better in the future, build resilience and trust into what they're doing, to try and avoid these things going forward?
So often for us, communication and transparency to build trust. Often these conversations, hard conversations, taking place behind closed doors between groups of people, widening that group of people and thinking about who else, thinking about stakeholders, thinking about who needs to know about this next and how are we doing that. So I think that is and modeling. So for me, modeling the behavior. So I'm the chief people officer and people look to me. I have influence on our executive team. And so I model the boundaries, not how are you not increasing the stress of your staff, those pieces. And how are you taking care of yourself? So that I can play that role on our executive team to spread out the resilience and to have people kind of modeling or adopting those practices. I think the more that you can share with people, the more that you can be empathetic and transparent, that builds trust in an organization so that when the hard decisions have to be made, people still feel or know at their core that I'm going to be taken care of. There is a reason that this is happening. And I trust that because that is the consistent behavior, as Australia said before. You can't just suddenly, okay, we're going to build resilience and we're going to start being transparent. It is, through small actions every day, consistently by everybody.
I think this is also, if I understood the question correctly, around kind of a lot of the things that people have to deal with and how do you build resilience and all of that. Sonia has some good points. We talked about some great things to do, like within the culture and how people relate. But I think it's also management and leadership's job to be very clear and process oriented around strategy. Because in the strategic process, that's where you mind all this, external things. And so who's in charge of the strategic process is the management team, the leadership. So if you create norms where you're always, well, quarterly, we review everything that we need to talk about, and these are the top 3 things that we care about, and these are the things that we're monitoring, you're also helping ease people and say, well, Yeah, I'm worried about that. And unless it's a real emergency or something that's going on, we don't have to worry about it until next quarter again when we're going to review things. So I think it's always been helpful to have this about setting time and pace around some of these things that people worry about. I mean, I do it in my real life too. It's like when you feel yourself like what they call that ruminating on things. And why am I worrying about this? I don't have to worry about that trip. It's like 2 months away. Like, why am I worrying about it right now? It's stressing me out. Like, I'll just postpone that, you know? So you do that also in kind of the business context and the flow of things. And it helps, I think it helps create a beat in the organization.
As Sonia mentioned, the transparency piece, I also remembered what we started the conversation with. It's also about being real, that not being unauthentic in terms of, I think it's okay for employees to see that you can be vulnerable too, that you're also feeling it and not trying to gloss over it and let's move on. So I think that also helps to build the human connection that we are also part of it. This is not a group which is in an ivory tower in closed doors making decisions and are not impacted at all. I think employees feel connected when you also show your emotions, that you can be vulnerable and you don't have all the answers, and we need to work together towards getting towards where we want to go towards our agenda for future. That has helped me also in terms of building that. And resilience by far is the most important skill for today, for future, for all career. And that's something that people need to really build, because the world around us is changing every minute. And if you cannot pick yourself back up and start again, I think it's going to be very difficult. So that's something that has to have. And I'm seeing that also in our employees, as post-COVID changes that have happened and what's happening around us right now. People are getting stronger on how our threshold about what we can handle or what we thought we could handle is definitely getting higher now, because we've seen so much in last 5 6 years that have passed. So that helps.
That's a great point that the, pace of change is not unique to any one company. It's impacting everybody. It's somewhat universal. It's not COVID, it's, the rise of AI. There's always going to be something. So the resilience and the ability to navigate that is a life skill, not, a circumstantial thing. When I was thinking about this question, nobody ever wants to have to do a layoff, but if you use that as an excuse to bury your head in the sand, as we've talked about, and not prepare or be mindful, you're really not doing yourself or anybody else a service. One strategy that has worked really well for me in past lives, especially in a highly acquisitive environment where layoffs are somewhat expected but still causes uncertainty, um, is to put some choice in the hands of the employees. And I think we've talked about the transparency piece, right? So if you can do it as you offer a buyout, you offer early retirement, I've done this even though it has created a ton of work with our legal team to package this up and message it correctly. When it has been successful and groups or departments where it's been appropriate, it's been an extremely successful strategy to protect morale, to make people feel like they have options and they're being consulted and they understand why. You all talked about the transparency and the why. At the end of the day, you can't share information with everybody all the time, and some people, truly don't even want to receive it. But if it directly impacts them and they're being given choices, I think that tends to feel a lot better. So, we have a few minutes left. Are there any other challenges that you all have dealt with, or, really successful strategies that you've employed that you'd like to share with the Connex audience?
Communication with layoffs. Think about how you communicate in your organization. So you're going to be doing a lot of communication from the individual, like your position has been eliminated, to the CEO who's doing town halls or doing some sort of communication. And so I know that Straya said double your communication. Yes, double, but also in every channel, like not just try to think about how you're communicating. We have a lot of frontline employees in public agencies that may or may not have access to email, for example. So knowing ahead of time how people receive information and making sure that you're providing the same message in all the different ways that you can communicate. Don't just rely on one.
I would just say that to add to that, because it is like communication is so challenging because it's not, because there are many channels, and then people also receive information in a variety of ways, etc. But the one thing to make sure of is that you have a strategy for transparency, because it it sets the tone for authenticity in the relationship. So you already have to know that, hey, we have to learn to be transparent because the world is transparent. It's so easy nowadays for someone to just post something on Glassdoor, and then it affects your organizations. So you really have to think about, we have to be transparent, and so we have to be intentional and mindful about how we make decisions, how we communicate it. We have to know all of our audiences and have strategies for that, because it's communication is also a thread. It's not just this one time I'm communicating. It's like people thread it through in their experiences.
Yeah, I would add thinking more deeply and intentionally about the ones who are left behind, so not the ones who are impacted. I think that is something that sometimes we undermine, that impact carries on, like they carry that weight for longer than what you would think. And the management has moved on to the new launches and new strategy for the quarter. But I think the employees, they carry it with them. So having more intentional strategy and how to help them get through this so that they can then contribute to the optimum level. I think that's something that has helped me. And I think that is also what I would like to underline, that think about those who are left behind also far more intentionally.
Thanks so much, Jamina. And thank you to each of you for the wisdom, the collective wisdom that we have shared today. This has been a pleasure to listen to everybody's experiences and learn from it. Thank you to Connex for convening this group on this really important topic. For those of you listening, if you have questions, please drop them below. There'll be a follow-up. But with that being said, I'm going to close us out with just another thanks for everybody for being here and for talking openly and for sharing all of your experience on this with the broader Connex community. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.